This Revolution, sponsored by the Heritage Foundation. Joining me now is the Washington Bureau Chief for BuzzFeed, John Stanton, and from Capitol Hill, NBC's Casey Hunt. John, you were covering this fiesta earlier today, and tell us, if you will, what exactly the Tea Party is proposing to do on this 5th-year anniversary, or at least what they were focused on in a substantive fashion, if in fact they were focused on anything in a substantive fashion.
I mean, aside from liberty.
Liberty talk for hours and hours and hours.
Yeah. A lot of talk about liberty. No, honestly, that's, I think, one of the big problems for them right now is that they don't have a unifying agenda. There's no person that's really stepped forward and taken the movement by the reins. You know, when they came out initially, it was Obamacare that really was pushing them forward, and that they really rallied around that. And now they don't have that so much. Today, only Ted Cruz spoke substantively about the need to repeal Obamacare. Everybody else was sort of all over the map, from, you know, China to Western civilization and the need to defend that, to, you know, sort of looking back fondly at what they'd done, to Rand Paul randomly asking them to be nice to the president and not call him names, which didn't seem to go over very well. So they are very much at a crossroads, I think, right now. They don't have a thing that's pushing them forward.
Casey, as bereft of ideas as the Tea Party may seem, the reality is they could wield fairly large influence on at least the Republican Party this primary season. If you look down the list, many, if not most, of Republican leadership has Tea Party challengers. Mitch McConnell, of course, Matt Bevin is challenging him, John Cornyn, Lindsey Graham. John Boehner is being challenged by a Tea Partier named J.D. Winteregg, which has to be the best name in this primary season thus far. How worried, I mean, give us a sense of the dynamics on Capitol Hill right now. How worried is the establishment about the Tea Party this midterm season?
The big difference is between people who have been worrying about it for the last year and people who have just woken up to the fact that it is something that they have to worry about. So somebody like Mitch McConnell, he's been preparing for a Tea Party challenger literally for months. I mean, they at the outset wanted to make sure that he was not vulnerable. That was the mistake that some senators made in past election cycles. One of the senators in Utah that actually made Mike Lee a senator made that mistake of not realizing that the Tea Party threat was legitimate. But you have Republican senators in other states who haven't been as prepared, haven't been raising money, haven't been on the air. Thad Cochran in Mississippi is one example. Pat Roberts in Kansas could potentially face some trouble after it was sort of revealed that he doesn't actually live full-time in his home state. He's being challenged by Dr. Milton
Wolf. A minor
Wolf.
point.
Right. A minor point that is of particular grievance to the Tea Party, who are really looking for, in particular, politicians who don't seem like politicians. And that's, you know, a move for these guys come across as the patrician sort of old era, right? They came in at a time when it was okay to move to Washington. You took your family with you. It was sort of considered an honorable way, a place to be. And that's not what these people are looking for at this point.
You know, John, if we talk about the new wave, Ted Cruz would be one of the key figures in that new wave of people who are in governance who hate the actual art of governance. And you mentioned that Rand Paul had a more conciliatory message, which I'm assuming that's sort of a broadcast to the national media and more of Rand Paul's efforts to kind of step into a sort of statesman-like position ahead of a potential 2016 bid. What was Ted Cruz saying? And he made, apparently, he's not making an ironclad promise to stay out of the primaries, given the hijinks that ensued a few weeks ago over the extension of the debt ceiling, the fact that he put Mitch McConnell and John Cornyn in very uncomfortable positions. How long is it before, you know, someone finds a shiv in Ted Cruz's back?
You know, it's funny. Cruz has been increasingly sort of open about the fact that he's not willing to continue to play by the rules in the Senate. You know, last fall he sort of agreed not to help raise money for the Senate, for instance, and now he's raising money for the Madison group, which is going against people like Mitch McConnell and some of his colleagues in the Senate. He seems to be okay with this. I think he's come to terms with the fact that the people around him don't like him much. He doesn't seem to really like them a whole lot. You know, and he does definitely wear it as a badge of honor. He tries to downplay how bad it is, but he no longer tries to hide the fact that this is happening.
He no longer tries the fact that he's basically the most hated man on Capitol Hill, even amongst his own members of his own party. Casey, We were talking at the beginning of the segment with John about policy prescriptions and, you know, this notion that the hole, that what Mike Lee said, the hole inside the Republican Party is exactly the size and shape of a conservative reform agenda. Nobody's actually proposing any policy for the rest of the year. Is that correct? I mean, effectively, Dave Camp came out with his tax reform package, and members of his own party said, no way, no how, not going to happen.
Right. Tax reform was basically dead before arrival. There are some questions now about whether or not the House can even move forward on an Obamacare alternative vote that they had planned. But, you know, that's the risk of being the opposition party. And, you know, the Tea Party's been able to sort of exist in this world where they are opposed to something that's sort of standing up in front of them. And if they actually retake the Senate in the fall, they're really going to have to take a hard look at, you know, what are they going to propose going forward.
In opposition space, no one can hear you scream. Just a paraphrasing of Alien. BuzzFeed's John Stanton and NBC's Casey Hunt. Thank you both for your time.
Thanks, Alex.
Coming